Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. The Polish Sejm is working on a parliamentary bill to abolish the State Commission for Investigating Russian Influence, which operated under the leadership of Professor Sławomir Cęckiewicz. The commission, which among other things revealed the scandalous agreement between the Military Counterintelligence Service and the Military Counterintelligence Service of the Federal Security Service of Russia, concluded during the time of Donald Tusk's first government. Its place is to be taken by a government commission appointed by Tusk under the leadership of the current head of the Military Counterintelligence Service, General Jarosław Struzik, whose deputy is still one of the architects of the agreement with the Russian services, Krzysztof Dusha.
One of the first actions of the Tusk coalition after taking power was to dismiss all members of the State Commission investigating Russian influence in Poland, led by Professor Sławomir Cęckiewicz. We want to consider, and I hope, vote in the Sejm to finally abolish this law, which this commission was set up basically for nothing. About the announced abolition of the commission, which revealed the facts of the Polish-Russian reset from the time of the first Tusk government, parliamentarians of the new government have little to say. You removed the members. The commission stayed. Why do you still want to abolish it? I am now working on a law that will improve your life as a journalist. Donald Tusk was afraid of this commission. The facts over the years and the evidence that has been gathered clearly show that Donald Tusk and his government have pursued an overtly pro-Russian policy. The commission, headed by Professor Cęckiewicz, revealed, among other things, the case of the ongoing cooperation from 2008 to 2014, and later the signed agreement between the Federal Security Service of Russia and the Military Counterintelligence Service, supervised by Donald Tusk. This is a commission that was supposed to prove some preconceived thesis. Why should there be such commissions in Poland? To paralyze the functioning of Professor Cęckiewicz's commission so that, God forbid, it would not investigate these matters, not to remind Poles of who made deals with Vladimir Putin on matters concerning our security and our economy. There was a disclosed agreement between the Military Counterintelligence Service and the Federal Security Service. That's right. And what are the special services for? To be special services and sometimes function in messy matters. The report that has been prepared is a factual report and is one big accusation against the actions of the Tusk government from 2007 to 2014, and he is covering his tracks at this point. We asked the Deputy Defense Minister about the dismantling of the State Commission that revealed facts related to the Polish-Russian reset. The agreement that you so often raise relates in large part to the withdrawal of Polish troops from Afghanistan. It is worth keeping this in mind, especially since such an agreement has been signed by dozens, if not hundreds of countries around the world. This is described in the report of the State Commission as one of the disinformation narratives used by the former leadership of the Military Counterintelligence Service. I am referring to the names Nosek, Pytel, and Dusha. Why do you want to abolish the State Commission? Because a second commission has been established to deal with this under the command of General Struzik, who is undoubtedly better qualified than Mr. Cęckiewicz. Because the commission that proved Russian influence between 2008 and 2014 was replaced by a government commission headed by the head of the Military Counterintelligence Service, General Struzik, whose deputy is one of its architects of the agreement with the Federal Security Service of Russia, Krzysztof Dusha. We have reached the document that the head of the commission sent to the Ministry of Defense. I kindly request that you provide the Commission with information on agreements or cooperation agreements in force or signed by you between 2004 and 2024 with the services of the Russian Federation and Belarus. Please indicate the subject of the agreement, its duration, significant effects, and any observed attempts to use such cooperation for purposes other than those described in the agreement, especially with regard to legally protected information. The question remains whether General Struzik also wants to examine documents related to the agreement between the Military Counterintelligence Service and the Federal Security Service of Russia. The Defense Ministry's response was due to the government commission on July 23rd. Radosław Janckiewicz, TV Republika.
The rickety boat, named the 13th December Coalition, is leaking, and the rock against which it may eventually crash is abortion. Frustrated left-wing activists would like to make the Polish People's Party, led by Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, walk the plank. The PSL leader has made it clear either the coalition partners start respecting the views of their allies or their joint voyage will end prematurely. There is a pro-abortion rally in front of the Sejm. The faction of aggressive activist Marta Lempart showed its anger at the failure of the attempt to liberalise the abortion law. The Polish People's Party, the PSL, was the hardest hit.
I mamy dwie koalicje. Jedna to jest Lewica i Koalicja Obywatelska, a druga to jest PiS, Konfederacja i PSL. Głosują razem. To jest ta nowa demokratyczna koalicja.
These words were heard, among others, by PSL coalition members from the parliamentary benches. But some of the PSL, according to activist Marta Lempart, have become so attached to their seats that even when the left spits in their faces, they pretend it's raining. We respect each other in the coalition. This is politics. There is no playing nice here. Szymon Hołownia, the Speaker of the Sejm, defended Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, but at the same time mocked him. I would like to say, don't mess with Wladek, don't mess with our little tiger. But the tiger just bared his teeth. Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz has made it clear that it would be in his party's interest to hold on to some of its conservative voters rather than form a coalition with the Progressive Civic Coalition and the left. The collapse of the coalition is less of a catastrophe than the loss of voters for the parties that make up the coalition. The question is whether such threats can be taken seriously. According to opposition politicians, the PSL's president is trying to draw attention to the demands of his environment, which his allies are turning a blind eye to. He sees the reality in the coalition, in which the interests of the PSL and Poland 2050 are neglected, while he has to keep a pretty smile on his face. Unfortunately, instead of a real Bengal tiger, we have a cardboard cutout who can't even keep people's attention. And so, instead of meaningful work on security, international policy or protecting Poles from inflation, the government offers us another episode of coalition frictions. Today, Poland doesn't have the luxury of arguing about such trivialities, such cultural squabbles. We have the Russians on our eastern border. We have a crisis in the EU. The whole world order is shaking. Let's concentrate on what makes Poland stronger. The problem is that in the pseudo-reality created on the 13th of December, Poland is strengthened by keeping law and justice out of power. That is why Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz would probably agree with Waldemar Pawlak's words from years ago. The coalition must go on. Maciej Strug, TV Republika. Russia struck Kharkiv with waves of S-300 missiles and drones overnight, causing at least one death. In the early morning, a Russian rocket damaged the offices of the Swiss Foundation for Mine Action in Kharkiv. The Ukrainian State Emergency Service released footage on Wednesday of the aftermath of a Russian strike at a private eco-park in the Kharkiv region. The services reported that the stables and a guest house caught fire, with 2 men being injured by the explosions and the staff able to evacuate and save horses in time. The first such attack struck an industrial zone in the city and the second a residential area, according to Kharkiv Mayor Ihor Terekhov, where one person is believed to have died. A drone attack on the Daniliviska village injured 2 men aged 18 and 41, according to the regional governor, Oleh Syniehavoov. Meanwhile, the Russian rocket attack early this morning destroyed several floors of the offices of the Swiss Foundation for Mine Action and damaged 6 of its vehicles. No casualties have been reported, with the attack happening early in the morning before any staff arrived for work. Since its founding in 1997, the FSD, a humanitarian non-profit organization based in Geneva, has conducted demining operations in over 30 countries. In Ukraine, FSD members of staff are deployed in the Chernihiv, Kharkiv and Donetsk regions, clearing agricultural land and raising awareness about the dangers of unexploded ordnance. Stop Child Mutilation was the name under which signatures were collected for a petition to ban the mutilation of minors. A draft law has been submitted to parliamentary committees to prevent operations to remove genital organs and the administration of puberty blockers to minors. Unfortunately, trends from the West and the pharmaceutical industry are encouraging children and their parents to follow the harmful ideology of gender. From a medical point of view, gender reassignment is not possible. Only external characteristics may be changed, and any attempt to resemble the opposite sex has far-reaching psychological and physical consequences.
Are there any objections to such a decision at this stage? I see none, so we shall pass it on. The motion to ban the mutilation of children was unanimously referred to the Committee on Health and the Committee on Justice and Human Rights for further action. It concerns a bill proposed by the Ordo Iuris Institute for Legal Culture Foundation to prevent surgical and medical procedures leading to the acquisition of opposite-sex characteristics in a minor, a partially or totally incapacitated person, a person diagnosed with a neurodevelopmental disorder, disease, or mental disorder. It is also a response to the current lack of regulation in this area in the Polish legal system. We have regulations that talk about the necessity of consenting to a medical procedure, but at the same time, we have provisions of the penal code that indicate criminal liability for anyone who commits grievous bodily harm. As is often the case with such procedures, no one is held responsible for depriving a person of the ability to reproduce. And this is precisely the effect of so-called transition, gender reassignment, or mutilation. The law is there to protect minors, argue its authors. Members of the December 13th coalition disagree. What you have proposed is contrary to the protection of children, because it does not take into account the fact that the child should be supported. A minor's decision is not fully autonomous when it comes to gender affirmation. I think 15, 16 years old, when quietly on their own, such a person, if they can give consent to sexual intercourse, they also know very well what sex they are. Politicians should not talk about this issue and decide who should be who. It is up to each of us to decide, even a child. The problem is, children easily succumb to pressures and trends, even dangerous ones. Publicists talk about ideology. Yes, it must be legislated. Yes, it needs to be done. And it needs to be done as soon as possible, because this whole ideology of wokeism is invading Poland, and we won't be able to defend ourselves against it if we don't have the tools to do so. A sad testimony to the mutilation of children in this way is the story of one of the richest people in the world, Elon Musk, and his son, who was given hormone blockers. He stated that his child had been sterilized through this, which they did not know would happen, and he had downright lost his child through this kind of child abuse. And Ordo Iuris, in its justification, talks about the dangers of transition. According to a number of studies, the likelihood of suicide increases not as a result of being denied transition, but once you have transitioned. It also causes serious mental health problems. From a medical point of view, gender reassignment is not really possible because the genetic information of our sex is written in every cell. For example, if we leave the gonads or genital organs and administer hormones typical of the opposite sex, the risk of cancer increases. There are two sexes, and the sex we are born with is the one we have. Everything else is a disorder to be treated. This is absolutely the right direction. I would support something like this. Children, especially underaged and handicapped children, cannot express their objection or consent to this type of experiment, and I am certain that this is a medical experiment. This is a step in the right direction. The Polish people concur. Prohibition, yes, if there is such a possibility, so that there are no such issues, such changes. Ban, yes, I am in favor of a ban. Let's not introduce change to something that has always been normal, yes. That's how nature created us, and let's not interfere with it. Human beings are born to be who they are, not for people to change. A ban on the mutilation of children has already been introduced in the United States, including Florida, Oklahoma, Texas, and Arizona. In Poland, the procedure of so-called gender reassignment is permitted and takes place through the courts. Soon, minors may be safe if parliamentarians focus on their well-being rather than ideology. Daniel Śmieciński, TV Republika.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. And from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.